any sort of respect to these lesser characters. Even their main trinity, they've had a hard time giving respect to them. And if the company doesn't give them the respect they deserve, how are people a part of the superhero community who aren't that knowledgeable, who are part of the mainstream, who are basically normies, how are they going to give them the respect? Batman is that cornerstone of the DC universe. But what they wanted to do was to replicate the Marvel method, and they wanted Green Lantern to be that cornerstone. DC has a huge Batman problem. Now, as one of Batman's biggest glazers, one of the biggest glazers on this platform, my glorious king, I can tell you for a fact that none of this has anything to do with Batman as a character. What it does have to do with is that DC relies on him a bit, not a bit, way too much. And the thing is, it kind of has led to their detriment. If you've seen in the recent years, let's just do an example. The Wonder Woman game just now that got canceled, that got me tilted for the longest time. How long has it been? Probably a month. It has got me pressed for such a long period of time, not just because it's a Wonder Woman game and Wonder Woman is one of my favorites, but the fact that it was made by Monolith Studios, the same people who made the Shadow of Mordor games, and for the fact that it had the Nemesis system from those games implemented. And what also gets me mad is that those systems were patented by Warner Bros. Because of that, no other company can use them, and they not only shut down Wonder Woman, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure they shut down Monolith Studios, which is one of the biggest L's I think I've seen in... Even recently, I'm pretty sure there's news that they canceled a Flash and a Constantine game too. Like, is DC just an L magnet at this point? Just because of Warner Brothers? They need their own company under all of this leadership, but I digress. The thing is, it leads to them segregating their universe, right? Having Batman on this pedestal, like so high above everyone else, and all the other characters just get some form of just scrap, right? I've noticed in recent years that they are trying to diversify, but how much does that really mean when it could all get pulled under the rug at any minute? Especially when you consider what I just talked about, that Wonder Woman project. They were like, you know what? Zaslav, all those people on the top, they were like, let's get Rocksteady back at making a Batman Arkham game. It's because the fall off that they experienced, all the financial setbacks from the Suicide Squad game, the Gotham Knights game. Even I'm pretty sure even Multiverses is a problem, right? They're shutting it down soon as well. So the amount of money they've lost, they're bleeding liquid money. It's expected considering all the things that happened and the fact that we didn't get any updates for the game. But it's just sad to see because DC is not just Batman, and as we've seen with James Gunn, he's trying to diversify the amount of projects, right? We see that he started off his DC universe with the Creature Commandos. We have Superman, that movie coming out in July 25th, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember, but like everything is riding on that film. He is the beacon of the DCU, and fingers crossed everything goes well, because if it doesn't, we are going straight back to Batman slop and nothing. The problem is that none of his projects are slop, but it's like I'm even as one of Batman's biggest supporters, bro, I am getting heated because I love the DC universe as a whole, but it's just been him for the last 10 years for the most part. There's always those one-in-one projects here and there, but you can see that DC has all of their cards on Batman. If you look at the publishing line for DC Comics from DC All In, you see that they're trying a lot more to do characters, right? To have other characters have their stories written, and they've been doing a pretty good job about it, particularly through their everything is connected strategy. So like Justice League Unlimited is a new comic that came out recently, and that essentially made everybody in the DCU, all the heroes at least, have a Justice League membership. And because of that, even teams like the JSA and the Titans, while they are their own individual branch, everyone is connected through that main Justice League headquarters, and all of them have their own space in the Watchtower, right, up in orbit. So that keeps everything connected, all the books, so anything that happens in these books can affect the other. And on top of that, they also have the smaller books like the Question book or the Captain Atom book. All of these things are short miniseries just to test the waters to see if anyone buys more into them. If they do, they will expand it to a 12-issue series, and then maybe from there there'd be an ongoing series that goes on until however many issues. But all of these series have some sort of connective tissue to the main Justice League comic, the overarching story of the DC All-In Initiative, or maybe even like previous events like the Absolute Power situation, where all the heroes had their powers taken away, and eventually at the end of the story the powers coming back, but then some of the powers went awry and went to different people, and then it's up to the Captain Atom and the Atom Project to kind of get all of these abilities back to the rightful owners. So it's like all these things are connected, plus the success with the recent Absolute universe going on with all the copies sold for those books, and the success of the DC Compact line, which, if you don't know, it's basically some of DC's best comics reformatted into a manga style, so that it's not only affordable, but it's also really easy to take on the go with you. So that's a plus, and it has led to a lot of those books being in the top 100 sold each month. Post-production matrix here, I'm going to be so honest, I forgot to do my daily question. So what I want to ask you guys is, who do you think should DC quote-unquote refocus their efforts to, so that they can be another linchpin, I guess, of the DC universe? I know who the obvious answer is, who I think that character should be, but I don't know, maybe you guys have your own favorites who you think have a very underrated or just latent potential that you could see carry the DC universe on their back if they really need to for the next, I don't know, whenever DC gets in trouble. Who do you think that character should be? And also, 96% of you guys, I believe, aren't subscribed, so if you would please do me a favor and subscribe, it really helps the channel out a ton. That's all from me, guys, and let's get back to the video. DC has kind of created a foolproof system for their comics, at least, so that they can continue these comics going forward, and this exposure to all of these characters going forward. But they also have what people complained about in the past, which was having those 10-15 Batman comics going on at the same time, which, while that might sound egregious, a lot less so now considering there's more variety in the comics. But for DC, their entire just perspective on having all of those Batman comics is that it kind of works like a safety net, right? If all else fails, they can rely on those Batman books that will always succeed, and that entire ideology is what can be placed on the figureheads of like Warner Bros. And all these like talking pieces, right? All these people at the top. That's their perspective too, because if you look at the history of DC, the thing that succeeded the most was always Batman, right? They always did well with that. If you look at the video games, right? The Batman Arkham series, highly successful. The animated TV shows, the movies, the Dark Knight trilogy is considered one of, if not the best superhero trilogy to this day, right? And that just made them a lot of money. But the problem is that it leads to a lot of characters being left out of the limelight, characters who rightfully deserve it as much as Batman, maybe some more so. But this is one of those cases where I kind of wish that they followed Marvel's line of thinking, which probably wasn't something that they had considering their financial status compared to Marvel. Because if you guys remember, not if you guys remember, everyone knows, but Marvel was in severe bankruptcy in the late 20th century, right? And because of that, they licensed a lot of their heroes to different companies. We had Sony making their Spider-Man films. We had Universal making their Hulk movie. We had Fox making Fantastic Four and X-Men films, and all these other projects, right, into like games and like television and whatever that may be. This allowed a lot of people to have more exposure to these characters. Instead of it being under one branch, one team had to work on it, they were given to others, so they can make as much movies and as much projects as they want. And because of that, it allowed Marvel to get more of a hold onto like the familiarity aspect of these heroes. People were familiar with them because there were just so much of them all around, right? And when they were in-house, if we're talking about in-house projects, there we had like Blade going on, we had Daredevil, we had Ghost Rider, right? We had Punisher, right? And these movies and video games is what kept these characters going forward, right? It kept them in the limelight. It allowed a lot of their smaller characters to get propped up, along with this is even before the MCU, it allowed their smaller characters to get propped up alongside the bigger household names, like a Spider-Man and a Wolverine. So that was one type of way of going about things. Another thing is that even if the projects were bad, like a Ghost Rider film, like a Daredevil film, it still got people knowing who these characters are, right? And then they saw Marvel's success, consistent success with the MCU, and they were like, wait, Marvel as a franchise is really good. It's just that they were just dealt a bad hand with the creators that were used for these projects, right? And because of that, it led to them having this mindset of that, oh, I can't wait until I see Ghost Rider brought into the MCU. He's been in the MCU since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but no one saw it. Either way, that's the mindset that DC needs, but they're kind of on a back foot because they've never gave any sort of respect to these lesser characters. Even their main Trinity, they've had a hard time giving respect to them. And if the company doesn't give them the respect they deserve, how are people a part of the superhero community who aren't that knowledgeable, who are part of the mainstream, who are basically normies, how are they going to give them the respect? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, Superman as a character, he's a founding father. He is the top dog when it comes to superheroes. But because of either bad just work, right? Just like bad adaptations, or the fact that they just really don't do much with him, has led to people coming to all of these preconceptions of Superman is, I don't know, overpowered, or Superman is boring, just because they take Superman at either face value or their only engagement with these DC characters or through fan discussions or topics. So like if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you'll interact with Superman because they're doing a Superman versus Goku. If you're a Sonic fan, you're going to interact with people who like the Flash, and because of that, you're only going to look at Flash from the perspective of power scaling. You're not going to look at the Flash as a unique individual character. You're just going to rag on him for certain outliers of him not using his speed to his full potential and getting, I don't know, tagged by somebody much slower than him. Or you're just going to talk about his absurd feats of, I don't know, rescuing like millions of people from like a nuclear explosion in like Planck time or something, right? This is how people see value in DC characters because they're not getting adapted. And the problem is, every single thing rides on James Gunn and his Superman movie doing well, because if he doesn't, we're just going straight back to where we started. Batman is the benchmark. He is the safety net, as I've said before. And we're already seeing this process from the video games, right? We're already seeing it take place with the people on top saying to cancel the Wonder Woman game. We're not losing any more money. Go straight back to Batman. And you can't really argue with them, which I guess you can, considering that I feel like if DC actually put in the effort to make something unique and special with all these other characters, people will show up, especially if it's good. People will definitely show up to support all of these projects because they're unique, not just because they have characters that we like. As we've seen, even if there's characters that we like, if it's bad, no one's going to support it. And DC fans kind of have a habit about like complaining about why is Batman getting all this attention, but they never show up when it's other characters, right? You have to talk the talk. You have to be a part of this community. You have to band together and come together as Marvel fans do to watch these projects and just to support it when it's good. And the thing is, even when it's good or solid or when they're going on the right track, DC fans are still nowhere to be seen. So you can't just complain about Batman. He's earned his spot on the top. You have to complain about the fact that the fans are not showing the executives any signs of being interested in these other characters, even when they're done solidly or decent. DC as a whole will never get out of this like sort of Batmania craze if certain projects don't succeed. Superman has to succeed. James Gunn's whole universe has to do well so that they can build up some bank, some finance, so that they could actually come back and put more effort into these other projects, right? They have to have something there to begin with, because if you remember, unlike Marvel, everything is under their umbrella. They, as a company, have to make the effort to push these projects, right? They're not going to sell it to other people so that they could bring in engagement, like the Marvel method. The problem is that they don't have that certain kickback that Marvel made, where it's like, if something does bad, we are going to try again. With DC, ever since I'm going to say ever since Green Lantern. When Green Lantern was made, that film in 2011 with Ryan Reynolds, it just led a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of people didn't like the film, and it didn't make it better that Ryan consistently gags and jokes about it as much as he can throughout his Deadpool films, throughout, I don't know, his interviews, right? It just rags on the film even more, giving it more hate than I think it really deserves, because like there's a lot of, not a lot, there's some good. Mark Strong as Sinestro, he was a great casting. There's a lot of interesting fight scenes that I saw there with him and like the training arc with him and like Hal. That was interesting. Kilowog was done well. And just the overall exposure to the amount of aliens in the Green Lantern universe, that was great. Everything else was just not, but they kind of tried. But the thing that really gets me is that Green Lantern, I'm going to compare Green Lantern to Daredevil. Green Lantern and Daredevil in the 2000s, they both had really great comics. On top of that, Green Lantern had a great animated series, and both got blockbuster films, right? They both had the film treatment, and they both did horribly. Fortunately, with Daredevil, Marvel had the attitude, probably due to their success and people wanting to see more. They were like, let's try this again. And Daredevil is now a household name. Right now a show is going on currently, and everyone is talking about it. Everybody is putting Daredevil back on the map because they know that every time Daredevil or like Punisher or these characters get on screen, writers tend to bring their A game. Even though Daredevil Born Again as a project has been reworked, retooled, cut over and over and over again because there are so many different variations of the show, they still managed to make something really, really solid. And that's just a testament of just Daredevil's just overall quality in media, how they built up this brand and how from the ground up, and how they're trying to keep that quality going forward. This is something DC could obviously do, but for the last 10 years they saw that failure and they're like, yeah, nope, let's dip. And what makes it worse is that yes, Batman is that cornerstone of the DC universe, but what they wanted to do was to replicate the Marvel method, and they wanted Green Lantern to be that cornerstone. They wanted to start a new cinematic universe with Green Lantern as that key figure, kind of like Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man, because they saw how much Green Lantern was popping off in the comics. And they were like, you know what? Green Lantern is doing exceedingly well, great comics, great show. If we get this movie franchise off the ground, he will be our A-list hero, or at least one of them, right? And it just, all of those plans just fell through. So they just went on instinct. They went back to what was considered guaranteed success. And that just led to just such a drought of DC content in the past couple years. And only now are we seeing a resurgence in DC media. And if you guys have been paying attention, there's a lot of DC, or a lot of writers, big juggernauts in the industry who want to write for DC, right? And they're picking a lot of just obscure projects because it's kind of similar to the Sony, Fox, Universal situation, where it's like those companies, they saw that little spark, that gem in what these characters could tell in storytelling, and a lot of these writers are coming into this franchise, right? They know full well that it is a ship that has sunk, yeah, but there's legs, there's room to grow, and these characters do show a lot of potential to these pretty established writers and creators. And if this doesn't really show you that there is a way forward, I don't know what will. But as I've said before, unfortunately, James Gunn, I am so sorry, but everything rides on the Superman film doing well. DC as a whole, from all of the announcements that we've gotten, we are a bit up there, right? We have solid ground to stand on. We just need some momentum. And the only way that gets going forward is from a blockbuster superhero film that does gangbusters. And Superman is the only way to go from here. It's our first shot. We are in deep waters right now, and this is the only way we will have any semblance of exploring the DCU going forward to get more people into the DC universe. Superman has to succeed, and I kind of like that because I kind of like relate it to this one Superman comic by Robert Venditti. I don't know if you guys seen it, where Superman literally takes over for Atlas and he has to carry the weight of the world on his back, right? That is the character, the beacon that Superman is. And the fact that fiction is resembling reality is kind of just cool to see. And it's kind of fascinating considering that it's happening to such an introspective and symbolic character like Superman. But like, I just need these films to succeed just because I want to see my Wally West Flash film. Not even just that. I need to see a Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner, Jon Stewart, somebody. Wonder Woman, I need to see her done well. All of these things, I want to see the content and media and comics that I read get implemented on the big screen so that other people can enjoy it. Because that's the feeling, right? If you were like a Marvel fan reading, I don't know, The Winter Soldier, and then you saw The Winter Soldier get adapted by the Russo brothers, that has to be a magical experience, seeing a comic that you enjoyed get adapted into a blockbuster film that does not only all the characters justice, but it gets more people intrigued into that world that was created, right? And that is something that I need to see for DC, because all the things that we've been given in terms of DC media, for the most part, when it comes to films, have been completely, I don't want to say original works, but for the most part, they've been original works with some sort of adaptation, like for Batman versus Superman, but they were bad adaptations. I think it's worse when you adapt something and it's bad than if you make something that's original and that is bad, because that means that iconic frame, that iconic piece of media can never, or is reluctant. People are reluctant to adapt it ever again just because it's been adapted before and because it was received so poorly. That's the worst case scenario, because I know James Gunn and a lot of people who are working with him are actually big comic nerds who are going to be adapting who are going to be adapting comic books. We've even seen it with like Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. That's a fantastic comic that came out pretty recently, I think 2-3 years ago. And they're already turning that comic into a screenplay. So you already see that the team that James Gunn is working with are big comic fans, even more so than the people working at the MCU who seem to be afraid of the comics for some reason. So that's one benefit that he has. But it's also a problem, because if you fumble any of these things, it's going to make people think that the source material or that entire concept in and of itself is straight garbage, and you do not want that as a DC fan. But either way, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below what you think should be done. Do you think that all of the blame should be placed on these executives, or do you think some of it should belong to the fans as well? Because I certainly think so. I think that it's not just the executives who make these bad decisions. Obviously, they're doing most of what they do for money, but it's also the fans' fault for not showing up, or just for not showing interest in general. Hot take, I know, but that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care.